My name is Rich Bradbury. I'm joined in the studio today by
Jeff Sandhu.
Arvind Ibraj.
And our producer of the day is Christine Wong. Say hello, Christine. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is World Mental Health Day. It's an issue that has affected many people, myself included. I've experienced depression. I've experienced anxiety. And I think we need to break barriers and be able to speak a lot more openly about it. And that's part of what today's show will be about. We're going to be looking at addressing how and if and could mental health be addressed better at your workplace. We'll be talking about entrepreneurs and how they need to eliminate the stigma around mental health. That's what we'll be talking about today. And that's our question. Could mental health be addressed better at your workplace? If you'd like to talk about it, we can keep it anonymous. 018-789-8899 is the WhatsApp number. Twitter or Instagram, we're at BFM Radio. And throughout the show, if you need or if you feel as though you need anybody to talk to at all, you can reach out to any one of us. We will talk to you. We're not experts, but we can put you onto somebody who could help you out if you need to. That's the topic of discussion today. We have quite a bit of... it's quite heavy material today, but I think and hope that some of you will find it useful. Story number 2 will be about how AI could be a window into our mental health.
Yeah.
And then wrapping up with how talking dogs can better help people in need. So something nice and uplifting for the end of the show. Right, let's start off with the article first, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion. So it starts up with whether or not you've ever taken a mental health day from work. And some of these stats are taken from the US, but they are relevant across the board, I feel. So according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, approximately 1 in 5 adults in the US, that's 46.6 million people, experiences mental illness in a given year. That means it's highly likely that you or someone you know is suffering and needs help. Now, because of its prevalence, mental health issues have a significant impact on the workplace. Research shows that mental disorders, particularly depression, have a profound effect on business productivity, even greater than physical disorders. In fact, serious mental illness costs the US $193.2 billion in lost earnings per year. Mental health issues are also the single greatest cause of worker disability in the US. Whilst these statistics are disturbing, studies show that they are even worse for entrepreneurs. It's time for entrepreneurs to acknowledge the risks, eliminate the stigma, and take preventative action around mental health. So just listen to some of these statistics. According to research, entrepreneurs are twice as likely to suffer from depression, 6 times more likely to suffer from ADHD, 3 times more likely to suffer from substance abuse, and 10 times more likely to suffer from bipolar disorder. Shocking facts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're not just alarming, they're downright scary. And the question is, why do entrepreneurs have a higher propensity to experience mental health challenges? Some of the reasons are given as 1, stress. Not surprisingly, starting a business is incredibly stressful. Number 2, isolation. Being an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur, can be very isolating. Typically in the early stages of starting a business, you have to wear multiple hats, juggle a mountain of priorities. Number 3, predisposition. According to more studies, the entrepreneur also reported having more mental illness in their immediate families than the control group. This suggests that traits that drive entrepreneurs might be inherited and linked to mental disorders.
Yeah, I think it's, we kind of take things for granted when we hear about stories about great entrepreneurs, but, it also, when we look at the challenges that they face, right, so starting the business and then growing a team, so then the challenges of hiring the right individuals, and then, it doesn't always work out. And you also then have to face the fact there are times as an entrepreneur, you have to fire someone, you have to let go of someone. That has an impact into, I remember seeing a founder of an online company who's a friend of mine on Instagram, and, I know her personally as well. And I remember her posting a story recently on her Insta story, just going through about how she had difficulties in sleeping for almost a whole week because she had to let someone go in her team. And and she was just constantly running through what the discussion would be, how does she even approach this individual, because at the end of the day, entrepreneurs care about, most entrepreneurs, they care about, the people that they're working with, and it's giving them, bread on the table. So how do they are able to keep the lights on for the business, but also to be able to, feed and provide their employees. And when things don't work out, which generally is a challenge of any entrepreneurs, it is very difficult for them to go through that whole process.
There's also the issue of a lot of entrepreneurs will say that when they started, they came out with a completely different idea. And then like 2 years down the road, the company that they run isn't the company that they started out with in the first place. Like we saw the story of WAG like a couple of days ago, where, he started with a very idealistic sort of idea for, to connect people who wanted to look after dogs. And then the company just went off on a tangent. The same thing happened, as much as we talk about people like Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook was the same thing. He wanted to have a service for few people in his university, and now it's become this whole other thing. He has admitted saying that it's not what he wanted to do. Twitter is the same thing. So even smaller entrepreneurs struggle with, are they doing the thing that they set out to do, or are they causing more harm to people by running this company?
Right.
Or are they helping more people by hiring them, or are they causing more harm by firing them?
Right.
And all this can cause stress for entrepreneurs that normally people wouldn't think about, because you only see the success that they go through or the money they're making or whatever, but you don't see them sort of behind the scenes and the struggles they have to put up with running this organization or company.
Which is good, like things are happening, like today, for example, World Mental Health Day, and the awareness of this, and people like your friend Jeff, posting on Instagram and discussing with people that, this is not an easy thing to be doing, and it's something we need to be talking about. And that's the issue, is kind of breaking that stigma, because there is a stigma around mental health. It creates an environment of fear and silence that prevents people from getting treatment. And the first way to stop the stigma around mental illness and entrepreneurs is to start talking about it by having open conversations about mental health. You can raise awareness and educate the entrepreneurial community, including people like venture capitalists, investors, founders, and entrepreneurs. All of these people who are involved, highly stressed environments, places where you have deadlines after deadline, even stuff like PR as well, which we know these people are working late into the evening, often very early to the morning, and they have to socialize. And I know a whole bunch of people who work in PR. Outwardly, they are wonderful. They're some of the most outgoing people but the minute they get back home, they are like in a shell. They just want to clam up. They don't want to talk. And there's nothing wrong with them physically. It's that they've worn themselves out.
Just like, very simple question. Do you guys wear headphones when you go home?
Rarely.
Yeah, why?
Because I wear them all day.
So because you're doing it at work. So you have to put on that work face. So when you go home, you want to just you want to settle into a home environment. Putting on headphones feels like you are at work.
Correct.
So same thing for me. I try to listen to less sounds when I'm out of the office, even though I'm not doing it actively. I try to, sort of settle into a milder sort of quieter sort of groove. I think they do the same thing. Like entrepreneurs, the same thing. Employees do the same thing. They have to separate work and life, and when you're not able to do that, then they struggle with things like mental health issues.
And that's the issue as well, in the sense that even if your organization has gives you a very strict time, 9 to 5, and then from 5 onwards you go back home, you don't need to bring work home and stuff. But that separation between mental health or any kind of issues around it can also kind of spill over to after working hours. So most entrepreneurs and most people, they would have their families, and you may have problems within the household itself, whether it's challenges between parents, siblings, loved ones, spouses, kids, so you have all these kind of worries or challenges that you have to face after working hours as well, right? So you're constantly at you're at the front of trying to solve every problem every time it appears, right? So, some do have the luxury to be able to detox away from everything and, zone out and have, your me time. But most people don't have that ability to just have that me time in order to recharge yourself, because they've got things to deal with at home as well, which is equally as stressful as what you would get at work.
And equally as important.
And equally important.
Not only that, but we often choose to allow ourselves to be accessible and contactable at these times when we should be like recharging. You know, we're checking our social media, we're posting photographs, and we're talking on WhatsApp. And the problem with some employers is that if they see that you're online, it's like, oh, well, he must be doing something. I can just message him. And there's that boundary has kind of become faded almost. It's no longer black and white. Right, we have to take a break. But as we said, if you'd like to get in touch with us and discuss this today, 018-789-8899 is the number. If you want to get in touch via WhatsApp, Twitter or Instagram, we're at BFM Radio. Could mental health be addressed better at your workplace? We've got a couple of people we managed to speak to coming up after this break. We've got Jesse Chong, the co-founder of Headspace, and just happened to be, we had a celebrity chef walking through the offices. You might have heard about him. His name is David Rocco. We had a quick chat with him as well. Music coming up. Katrina and the Waves, Walking on Sunshine on BFM 89.9.
Balanced Frank Medium. BFM 89.9.
Welcome back to Enterprise Biz Bites, ladies and gents. My name is Rich Bradbury. Today I'm joined in the studio by
Chef Sandhu.
Arvind Yuvraj.
We are discussing World Mental Health Day today and whether or not mental health could be addressed better at your workplace. We are asking for you guys to give us some feedback or even just discuss the topic if you feel like it. WhatsApp is 018-789-8899. Twitter and Instagram, we're at BFM Radio. Over to Twitter first with Arv.
Yeah, so this comes from That's My Full Name, who says, yes, education for all. It doesn't help when your colleague thinks those with mental health issues should be locked up because they are dangerous. People also need to know how and where to get help. There is too much focus on performance over everything else. And by the way, employees should be able to confide in someone. Angry to hear about a workplace counselor who blabbered what was shared to her to the whole office.
Yeah,
Wow.
anonymity is actually pretty important when it comes to these kind of things, right? So, yeah.
So the other thing, what we didn't touch on when we were opening up is we spoke about some of the reasons that these entrepreneurs have issues: stress, isolation, predisposition, and stuff like stigma. Now, one of the big things, of course, is shame. People like Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, and it confirms that mental illness can affect anybody at any stage in their career. More often than not, entrepreneurs try to exude this extreme confidence and optimism at all times, and when something is wrong, they don't necessarily want to discuss it because they feel as though, it's shameful to admit to having a problem.
No, and also because they have to put on that face. Because if you're running a company or you're in charge of maybe dozens of people, then you don't want to look like you have an issue. And a lot of people are going to look up to you and go like, oh, if that person has an issue, what's the company going to go through? What's the future of the company?
Right.
So
there's a really good TED Talk by a woman called Brené Brown. And it's called, it's about vulnerability and how vulnerability is not weakness, it's an act of courage. And by embracing vulnerability, entrepreneurs can finally free themselves from shame, get the help they need, and empower others to do the same. We've had some WhatsApp messages. Jeff?
Yeah, so we sent in a WhatsApp message saying, my negative emotions reduce dramatically when I hear Christine say hi every day. I think one of the biggest issues with mental health at workplace is that people feel that workplace is just for work, not where you pour out emotions and talk about feelings. Yet at the same time, one of the main causes of depression is work. And these are precisely the people you should share your problems with because they are the only ones that can change that situation. I couldn't agree more with you. And yes, our kind of like negative emotions kind of reduce dramatically when we hear Christine says hi every day to us.
Say it again, Christine.
Hi.
There we go.
Right. So, of course, we had a discussion earlier on, and we managed to get a couple of people to talk to regarding today's topic. The first person we spoke with was Jesse Chong, the co-founder of Headspace in SS15, which is a co-sharing space designed for optimal productivity. We asked a bunch of questions. We started off with what were the elements you considered when designing Headspace?
So in design process of Headspace, it's the 5 senses that we are all familiar with: your sight, your hearing, the smell, the touch, and also the feel. The five senses is really important to all of us, and how our emotions are triggered, how human behaviors are. That is why for us we designed the place that it has to be quiet. It has to be a soothing environment with the right music, and it has to smell comfortable. The table arrangements and the furniture and also the natural lighting needs to come all together to find a balance where it's really comfortable enough for you to clear a headspace to do your work better, but not too comfortable that you get loungy and get lazy, and then like a home environment that is too comfortable that you would just sit there and fall asleep within a short period of time.
Yeah, you don't want to be falling asleep at work.
Yeah, but it's also interesting, like, the senses, right? When you design something, do you take that into consideration when you're doing an office, or is it just all about, who sits where, who sits what, and the colors? But there's also like smell that's like, hugely important that we don't really consider. We've moved to a new office more than a year ago, and when we moved in, it's a new place, and it was really new in the fact that we were still getting some
Construction
smell, right? And that had an impact on all of us.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just the other day yesterday, in fact, I think it was, we were talking about the dentists and how they've redone it so it smelled nice, it looked nice. A couple of days ago, we spoke about the startup called the Cave in San Francisco, where okay, it might sound a little bit weird to some people, but they had this whole thing, it smells good, it's a productive space. With that in mind, we asked as well, how could existing office spaces better address a distractionless, more focused environment?
For the existing workspaces, fundamentally, the most important factor is they would need to create a culture of when there's a focused time period, they should really be able to focus during that 2-hour period, for example, to not have any distraction or to not have any small talks in between, or do not have like, hey, like it's usually in a very fun and very fun environment, fun working environment, or like particularly in startups, right, which can be very distracting. So there will be times that it needs to be more focused, that there should be a scheduled discussion, which is whatever thoughts that these people have during that period of time, they can write it down somewhere, and then when it's time for discussion or during lunchtime, that's where they bring it up and discuss and talk about it. That would be the fundamental for them to have more headspace during their working period.
Right. Now, as we mentioned a little bit earlier on, there was a celebrity chef in the office a little bit earlier on today, and now his name is David Rocco. And we're telling you this because just in a couple of weeks' time, there will be a full interview on Breaking Bread. But, of course, Malaysians and food hand in hand, and we thought, well, we'd ask a chef about his opinion on stuff like, mental health. And how does somebody who works in an extremely high-pressured environment like a kitchen deal with something like this? So the first question was, at your restaurant, how do you address mental health?
Well, it's a good question, and it's multi-layered because part of my job is going out into the world and connecting with people through food. And I think at the end of the day, food is everything to everyone. We all eat, and it means so much to us, and it's a connector. And so, I think now with the stress of not just the F&B industry, but also home life, kids, there's more loneliness because we're not eating together. In my office, as an example, we have a staff meal where we sit down and we eat once a week. And that might seem, well, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is because we all have different schedules. I travel a lot. Home life, same thing. And those values, I think, apply to even in the restaurant. We all need that human connection with each other. And the irony is that we're making food in the restaurant industry for other people to feel good and connect, and yet there's a disconnection with each other. So staff meal is, I think, huge and important, and giving the staff the ability to connect and eat what they're cooking, and just having that moment where, okay, it's staff time, let's all sit down together.
Now, David, as a public figure, you not only have a platform, but also a lot of attention on you constantly. How do you balance that?
Well, I'm lucky that my we'll use fame for lack of a better term, my celebrity has come through a lot of hard work and over time. And so that gives me more of a grounded connect, I'm more grounded. And I always say I'm never as good as people say I am. And I'm certainly not as bad as the haters that tell me how bad I am. What grounds me is that, it's not just about the work and the celebrity, but there's, my family life. My kids ground me. And so for me, at the end of the day, it's just a job. And what I love about my job is that it allows me to see the world, connect with people in a deep way. And I try and keep that balance with family life and just in general balance.
You travel a lot, and you've mentioned being away from your family and staff often. When it comes to remote working, how do you manage?
Well, I mean, it's work certainly, and the glamour of travel and all the rest of it is, sounds glamorous, but it's hard work. And part of it is I love what I do, but I try and seek out balance, that connection with people, even when I'm on the road, where I never order room service, to eat by myself. I would sooner go to the bar and just sit down and either, talk to the bartender or just meet people and connect with them. So for me, I mean, what motivates me and what I absolutely love, I love food, and I love people, and I love that connectivity with each other.
That's the takeaway from that, right? I mean, we discussed earlier on the connectivity and talking to people. If you have an issue or if you feel as though you're having problems, just reaching out can be extremely difficult.
Yep.
But once you've done it and you've made one connection and you've had one conversation, that ball starts rolling and it becomes a lot easier to manage.
Sometimes also, I love what he said about staff meals. So, and going back to we who sent in the really good WhatsApp message about how, the issues sometimes on mental health, it could be caused by work stress, right? And no one else is better to understand your work stress than your colleagues itself, right? The people who you work around.
Yeah.
And I think, it is really good if you actually have some sort of, maybe once a month to have a meal with your team, and, have that ability where you can talk, because you may not realize this, but you may not be alone.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That you're not alone. I
You're
think
not alone.
Yeah. The moment people start communicating, then it just snowballs. You get like, oh, this person's having this problem. This person feels the same way. And then you suddenly realize that most people around you are going through their own struggles and their own issues, but nobody talks about it because they feel they're the only one who has the problem.
I think a lot of what we're discussing here as well is part of the issue why mental health had become such an issue for the longest time is that there was this whole thing about you keep your home life at home, and you don't discuss it when you come to work. You just come, you do your work, and you go home. But as work life has changed and the way in which we communicate has changed and the closer that we become has changed, we are starting to have those discussions at work. Because we're not just colleagues, a lot of us, we're friends as well.
Yeah.
And like me and you, Rich, we've been working together for nearly 10 years.
Yes.
And how can I just still consider you as a colleague?
Right.
It's more of a friend.
Yeah.
So it's that line has blurred, and we need to speak up.
Indeed. Time for a break, ladies and gents. We are discussing whether or not and how could mental health be addressed better at your workplace, or if you're an entrepreneur, are you having trouble with stuff like burnout? Are you having difficulties? Let us know. Talk to us. 018-789-8899 on WhatsApp, Twitter and Instagram. We're at BFM Radio. Short break, and when we come back, story number 2, AI and how it could be a window into our mental health here on BFM 89.9.